Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Career Advice Office Hours. My name is Vera Fishman. I'm a career consultant and I manage career services at Coursera. And today I am here to answer all of your questions about the topic of networking. So we are going to start off with just a little bit of an overview of the topic of networking. I'm going to share just a very short presentation and give you a little bit of a framework to think about networking. In the meantime, please ask any questions you have related to the topic of networking in chat. And then once I'm done with this short presentation, I will get straight to answering your questions. And now you should be able to see my screen. And as I said, I'm going to share just a few things about networking for context for our conversations. So we're here again for Career Advice Office Hours. I'm going to cover the topic of networking, and then in just a few minutes, we're going to go into the Q&A. So in the meantime, please do share any questions that you have in chat so that we can get to them straight at the end of this presentation. But first, let me introduce myself. As I said, my name is Vera Fishman. I'm a career consultant. I manage career services at Coursera. So if you're familiar with the Coursera Career Center on the Coursera community platform, I'm the person behind that Career Center. If you're not familiar with the Career Center, we'll talk about it in just a few minutes. I do want to show you what it's like so that you can take advantage of all of the resources available there. But in terms of my background, I did start my career in marketing analytics and marketing management, and then I shifted into coaching and specifically career coaching. I have been a career coach for over 5 years now. I'm located in the Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. So I've worked with a lot of job seekers, career advancers, people going through all kinds of career transitions, a lot of them located in the Silicon Valley, a lot of them located outside of the Silicon Valley in the United States and across the world. I've coached well over 1,000 people one-on-one. I've also led presentations, seminars, webinars on all topics related to career management, from building resilience in your career to interviewing, networking, writing your resume, etc. So I'm very much familiar with the topic of networking and how you can utilize networking at every stage in your career. And any questions that you have related to networking today, I will be absolutely happy to address them. But before we jump in, again, you might already know what you want to ask, but I did want to set some ground for what network really means. And networking is really anything related to interacting with others, to exchange information, to help you in your job search process. Actually, not just job search, but career management overall. So networking is anything to do with talking to people. Maybe there are specific people that you want to talk to because you want to get a job reference. Or maybe you just generally want to build your network and have more people that you can reach out to when you need to. Maybe there are people reaching out to you saying, hey, I want to network with you, and you're wondering how to really take advantage and respond to that. Maybe you're looking for a mentor and you want to decide what to do with your next career move. Anything that requires communicating with another person can be qualified as networking, and I invite you to ask questions about all of that today. One thing that I want you to think about is finding people to network with, right? I do find that the concept of networking can be a little bit overwhelming because, again, it's anything and everything. But the way I like to think about it is if you know who it is that you want to network with, you can always find that person. I often work with people who come to me and say, well, I can't really do networking. I don't know anyone in my field. Maybe I'm changing careers and I'm new to the field, or I'm just graduating from university. Don't have a lot of work experience. I don't have people to network with. Well, that is absolutely not true. Of course, you can always network with people that you already know. But again, if you know who are the types of people you're looking for, you should always be able to find those people and reach out to them. So some of the things to think about in terms of how do you network is thinking of how to find those people. And again, maybe those are people you already know, or maybe you have shared connections with those people. Maybe you don't know them, and then you can search for them. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. I'm sure LinkedIn will come up many times in our conversation today. So you can use LinkedIn to search for people based on their job titles, based on their companies, industries, etc. You can also use tools, other social networks such as Twitter, for example, right? You can find people who share certain information who might be of interest to you. Another place to find people are professional groups. And there are generally two types of groups that I think about. One are groups that are based on interest, right? So they might be professional organizations, for example, such as Human Resource Management Society for HR professionals. Maybe they're just interest groups that you are interested in. And those groups can be, they can be informal, they can be on Facebook, they can be on other platforms, etc. So I invite you to kind of think about what is the industry you're interested in and what are the groups, where do you find people who are talking about topics related to those, to that industry. Another type of groups that you can think about are people who are going through a similar process as you. So for example, if you're thinking of networking because you're looking for a job, think about where do other people who look for a job hang out? Again, there are a lot of great groups out there. I'm a big Facebook fan for that. And if you go to Facebook and you do a search for your local job search groups, or maybe career support groups, or maybe networking groups, oftentimes those are great places where not only job seekers hang out, those job seekers can be helpful for you because maybe they do have networks in the industry you're looking for, but sometimes there are recruiters who hang out there because they know that that's where they can search for talent. So think about those groups and anywhere where you can start having those conversations. And then last but not least, well, a little bit less in our current world, but attending live events is a great way to run into people. You're probably not going to have control over who exactly you come there. So if you're looking for, a program manager at Uber, specifically that person might not be there, but you might run into somebody who can be useful to you, and by attending live events. And when I say live events, right, they can be large formal live events such as conferences. They can also be smaller events. They can be organizations, industry groups, for example, usually have meetups and things like that. They can be informal events. Again, meetup.com, for example, in the United States particularly, is a great resource. But again, just going to places, physically attending, going to places where people you might want to network with, to hang out, is a great way to do it. All right, and one last thing that I do want you to think about is, what is this whole concept of professional network, right? We say it all the time. What is my network? Who's in my network? Who do I network with, etc. But I really invite you to think about it as like, what does that really mean for you? For me personally, my professional network is a network of people that I can reach out to if I need if I have a question, if I need support, if I need help, etc. And so for me, everybody who I consider to be a part of my network are people that I want to have relationships with, to the point where I can go to them if I need to. That means that I have an actual relationship with them. It's not just somebody that I have seen across the street. So think about, what does it mean having that person in your network? And this is just a way to, the slide is designed to show you a way to think about how relationship with a person can develop. Starts with you just meeting a person, right? You've been, let's say it's a social event, you've been introduced to somebody. You're probably, if you see them again the next day, you're going to say hi to them, but that's going to disappear pretty quickly. You might exchange contact information with them. You might be able to find them again if you need to, but again, probably not quite a relationship there yet. You can connect over LinkedIn and social media, and thus have somewhat of an ongoing contact with them, right? You will, for example, if you connect with somebody on LinkedIn, you will see their updates, they will see your updates. If they post or you post information, we will keep track of each other. But again, you don't necessarily have like a relationship happening. And the next step is where like the idea of networking really comes in, is how do you actually build that relationship, right? So once you've connected, what does it mean to build a relationship? And a really great way to do that is through one-on-one conversations. If it's a person that you wouldn't normally interact with in your life, outside of how you've been introduced, it's a really great idea to sort of set up a short informational conversation one-on-one time to really solidify that relationship. Sit down with someone, ask them about who they are, tell them about yourself. If it's somebody that you want to talk to about your career specifically, great, that gives you a topic to discuss. But even if it's somebody that you've enjoyed talking to, always having that one-on-one conversation is a really, really great and important building block in building a relationship. And then finally, imagine somebody who's already in your active network. Maybe you've talked to them, maybe you've worked with them in the past or interacted some other way. Something that's important, and I encourage you to think about, is how do you keep that relationship alive? And when I say alive, right, is imagine you've worked with somebody. Of course, something comes up and you can reach out to them if you don't work with them anymore 3 months later. What about a year later? What about 5 years later? What about 10 years later? It's really important that you maintain those connections and those relationships, even if you don't normally interact with those people anymore. And it might seem overwhelming, but it's actually not as difficult to do if you take a little bit of effort of, if you reach out to somebody like once a year, even with a note saying, hey, I just saw this and I thought of you. I just read this article and it made me think of you. It's a really great way to make sure that that relationship is live. So my rule of thumb is whenever I think of a person that is in my network, for whatever small reason, right? Maybe I read something, maybe I saw something, maybe somebody reminded me of a conversation I've had with them, I just send them a quick note. It might be just a one-liner, but it's a really great way to keep your network active. And I'm guessing we're going to have some questions about that as well today. All right, and one more thing that I want to talk about before I shift into answering questions is, as I promised, I do want to introduce the Coursera Career Center, because Coursera Career Center is the place where we host all of our job search and career management resources. And I want to make sure that you're able to take advantage of those resources. So you are welcome to post your questions in chat if you haven't done that yet. And in the meantime, I'm just going to click on this link. I'm going to take you to the Coursera community first. And Coursera community is where the Career Center is. And I'm going to show you real quick what are the resources available there. So this is what the Coursera community looks like if you haven't seen it. And here at the very top of the navigation, you can hopefully see there is a link. One of the tabs you can go to is the Career Center, which is what I'm going to always adding to the Career more and more resources available show you today is these job search resources. So if you're currently looking for a job, this is a great place to go, because this is where you can access a lot of useful information. So there is, we have job search guides in there, which are thorough, providing detailed advice on different steps of the job search, from writing your resume to getting interviews to researching a new career. Also, we have recordings of all job search related webinars and events that we've hosted here at Coursera, as well as curation of courses from our partners on Coursera. So as you know, on the Coursera platform itself, there's a lot of great content from partners, and there are some really useful courses that do with from build portfolio to interviewing and resume writing. And this is where we share what those courses are. Again, that list is constantly updated, so I encourage you to take advantage of these resources. Okay, so with that, I've shared what I wanted to share about networking today, and I'm really excited to answer your questions now. Again, please post your questions in chat. The sooner you post the question, the more chances there are that we will get to your questions. We also have sourced some questions in advance. We will give priority to whatever comes in chat right now. And then if we get through all of the questions in chat, we will move on to the questions that we've sourced in advance. However, what I'm trying to say is don't wait too long to ask your question. And I'm going to stop sharing my my screen now so that you can just see me and we can have a conversation here. Wonderful. All right, so our first question is, so Vikram asks, how do you start building connections to learn about a new field when you're making a transition? For example, working in management and shifting to IT. And that is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful question. And it's a very fundamental question, Vikram, that you're asking, and I'm really happy you're asking it. Again, I see this all the time. I've worked with a lot of people who are making a transition. And what I see is one of the biggest challenges in making a career transition is that people often have the skills to do the job in their new careers, right? Maybe you took a course, a certification, got a new even degree, for example, in IT, but you've actually never had an IT job, and you've never really hung out with a lot of people who are in IT. So how do you become a professional in that field if you've never worked in that field? And the first most important thing is really start hanging out with people who are in IT. I'm going to be using IT as an example here. What does that mean, right? That means is, again, it is really important to start getting a sense, start thinking like an IT professional even before you become one. So my recommendation would be make sure to go through all of the relevant industry organization, LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, and literally go to LinkedIn, do a search for IT in LinkedIn groups. See what are the groups that pop up. See what are the conversations that are happening there. If you find active groups, join those groups. Start just monitoring what people are talking about there. Do the same thing with Facebook. Do a Google search for industry, for IT associations. Start looking, again, join those groups just to see what the conversations that are happening, what are people talking about, what are people interested in. You just want to be a part of that environment. You're going to get much more comfortable if you're able to speak that language with people on daily basis, if you will. That's one. So that's just, as I said, like being in the right environments and have them be a part of your life. Number two is actually having conversations, right? As I talked about a little bit earlier. So the question is, if you don't know anybody in IT and you want to start talking in IT to people in IT to learn about the new field. Well, first question to think about is, who are the people that you want to talk to? For example, if you're looking to transition and be a network engineer, some people who can be of real help to you are people who already are network engineers. These are the people who are going to, if you're trying to learn about the industry, these are the people who are going to really help you understand what it is that the network engineering job requires, and what do you need for success, what kind of certifications you need, etc. So what I would recommend, again, LinkedIn is your best friend. Go to LinkedIn and do a people search on LinkedIn. You will see that there is a search bar at the top of your screen on LinkedIn. Just enter network engineer in that search bar, and LinkedIn will give you an option of what kind of search to do. You can search jobs, you can search groups, you can search people. What you want to do is do a people search. So you're searching for people. At that point of time, what LinkedIn is going to do is it's going to show you a list of people who meet the search criteria network engineer. Now, the results are going to be based on your own network and people who are in your extended network. Maybe your second degree connections, third degree connections are going to be at the top. The bigger your network is, extended network, right? Not only the people you're connected to, but people who you might have shared connections with, or people 2 connections away from you. The more results you're going to be able to see there. And once you find those people, start looking at LinkedIn profiles. It's actually one of my favorite things to do is to look at a lot of LinkedIn profiles. So you have a list of network engineers. You are probably going to end up with a list of, thousands, maybe tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. You can limit that list further, but also maybe by your geographic location, right? So I'm located in Santa Clara, California. Maybe I just want to look at network engineers in Santa Clara, California. So I'm going to start opening profiles, and I'm literally going to start opening profiles in tabs. And I'm probably going to start with opening, maybe 100 profiles, going through them. Once I open, the reason I do that is because, well, I'm looking for people that I want to reach out to. I'm looking for people that I think might be able to, that if I talk to them, they might be able to share useful information with me. So I'm going to be looking at those profiles and reading them over and seeing who are the people that resonate with me the most. When I say resonate with me, I mean people who I feel like I could really talk to them based on their LinkedIn profile. One thing, the very basic criteria I'm looking for people who have well-developed LinkedIn profiles. What I mean by that is, they have a picture there, they have a summary there, and they have details about their professional experience and education. The reason I'm looking for that is A, I at least know who they are and what their story is, but B, also if they have a very basic LinkedIn profile with no picture, etc., I'm guessing they created a LinkedIn profile just because you were supposed to have a LinkedIn profile. And they're not really interested in talking to people as much. They're not really into networking. If I find somebody who has a profile, a picture, an updated headline, and a thorough summary, and you'll see some people in their summaries will say, hey, I'm always open to talking to people. You can reach me at, and provide their email addresses. Those are great people to reach out to because they're open to talking to people. So once you, and again, as I said, I recommend go through a bunch of profiles, go through hundreds of profiles if you need to. Find maybe a couple dozen people that you're potentially interested in talking to, and then send them a note. Send them a connection request. Even if you don't have LinkedIn premium account, that's fine. You don't need it. Send that person a connection request. In your connection request, mention that, hey, I found your LinkedIn profile because it's because I wanted to talk to you, learn about your career. And then from there, you can schedule a conversation and actually learn from them. Again, this is building your network one person at a time. So every person you reach out to, every person you connect with, every person you talk to are going to really expand what you know about your new industry. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next question because I'm assuming that we're going to go back to this topic over and over again. So Lisa is asking, I have made quite a few new connections on LinkedIn. The next step is an informational interview. What really should this all be about? Should you provide a resume? Fantastic question and a really great topic to discuss after our previous question, right? So in the previous question, we've talked about the idea of like, how do you connect with people you don't know? Now, Lisa's question is, well, say I found these people, what do I actually talk to them about? What is this concept of informational interviews all about? And to be completely honest, I don't like the term informational interviews because I don't think it really describes what the process is. And I think that it can be a little bit confusing. So essentially, again, let's go back to the idea. You're transitioning to a new industry. You're trying to understand, what do you need to do? And the things that you need to understand, right? First is you probably want to understand, like, well, okay, so say I'm currently a marketing manager and I'm potentially interested, and I'm thinking I want to be I want to be more of an instructional designer. It sounds like instructional designers do interesting things, but I don't really know what to do and whether that's actually a good fit for me or not. And so where a lot of people go in this situation, the first thing they do is they start looking at job descriptions. And in job descriptions, you're often going to have a list of requirements for that job. For example, you need to have, you need to know certain software, you need to have certain set of skills. So people start looking at job descriptions, like, okay, so these are the things, and realizing these are the things that are instructional designers need to do. But what do you actually need to get a job, right? What does it really mean to be in that job day to day? If I get a certain certification, like, am I actually going to be able to get a job? Like, who do instructional designers work with? What do they do day to day? What kind of software do they use? What kind of meetings do they go to? What kind of decisions do they make? What are the most important skills for them? Is it the ability to conceptualize trainings? Is that the ability to build those trainings in learning management systems? Is that the ability to communicate to people? Those are all questions that you're probably not going to be able to understand based on job descriptions. So these are the questions that you can find out answers to in informational interviews. So before you start reaching out to people for informational interview, Lisa, I'm going to encourage you, like, think about what it is that you're trying to learn. A goal for an informational interview should always be learning. So sit down and think about what it is that you want to learn from the person. One thing that you might hear a lot about informational interviews is people, informational interview might turn into an actual interview. And so you need to always be ready to present yourself and to be ready to share your information and maybe share your resume. That's true. But again, as far as informational interviews go, you always should be learning. Again, for example, I've talked about the case where you're learning because you're looking to potentially explore a new career. Another reason you might want to do an informational interview is because you're already a professional, right? You're already a marketing professional. You're looking for another marketing job. And you might be doing an informational interview because you actually want a referral for a job. That's completely appropriate, but again, you should be going in with specific questions in mind. Maybe you want to learn about a specific company, right? Maybe you want to work specifically at Coursera. If you're a marketing professional and you want to do marketing at Coursera, and maybe you've even applied for a role online and never heard back, well, you don't know what's going on. So a really good thing to do would be, well, find somebody who is in a relevant marketing role at Coursera, reach out to them for an informational interview. Then you can find out from them what that role is like at Coursera. You can find out from them what are the qualities that Coursera looks for in that role. You can find out from them potentially even what the hiring process looks like. The reason to share a resume in an informational interview would be if you maybe want to ask for your feedback on your resume. So you're talking to a person who is at a company you're interested in, and you might want to show them your resume and say, hey, well, if I were to apply to this role with this resume, what is your feedback? What do you think about this resume? What do you think about my experience? Does this look like a candidate that you think your team would be interested in? And that would be a reason to share your resume. Because again, you want to ask specific questions in an informational interview because it will make it easy for the other person to provide you with the information that you need. Okay, let's see what's our next question. How do you stay motivated when you're just starting to build your network on LinkedIn? One comment we've heard is that it can feel discouraging when you compare your professional progress to others. What a great question. I think comparing yourself to others is always a difficult space to be emotionally. And what's important is to find a way to feel good about the progress that you're making, right? If you start looking at people who are so farther ahead in their career than you are, and you're thinking, how do you get from where you are now to where they are? Maybe it's inspiring, but maybe it's discouraging. I can completely see that. So I think let's focus specifically on a question: how do you stay motivated when you're just starting to build out your network on LinkedIn? Set yourself goals for building out your network. It takes time. If you are building out your network through just reaching out to people you don't know via LinkedIn, there's going to be a lot of people who potentially don't respond to you. There is going to be a lot of waiting, unanswered messages, which can be discouraging. But try to break out the process as much as possible. So for example, if fundamentally I want to grow my network on LinkedIn, I want there to be 100 people, I want to add 100 people to my LinkedIn network. That's 100 people added to my LinkedIn network. I'm probably going to have to send much more connection requests than 100, especially if I'm sending those connection requests to strangers who might or might not respond to them. And that probably means that I'm going to need to find even more people. So start breaking it out into tasks. Think about if you want to have 100 or even 100 informational interviews. That's a lot of informational interviews. Let's say 10 informational interviews. You potentially want to reach out, connect with 100 people because you're going to have hard time scheduling, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to connect with 100 people. You're probably going to send out potentially a few hundred connection requests because there are some people who are not going to respond to that. And then that means you probably need to find at least 500 profiles of people who you can potentially talk to, right? Just to get those 10 informational interviews. And that's a good starting point, right? Just first of all, sit with it and think about the amount of work those conversations require. Now, those 10 conversations are going to absolutely be worth the time you invest into making them happen. But do recognize how much work they're going to take, right? Find 500 people, send out, 300 connection requests, connect with 100 people, schedule conversations with 10 people, talk to those 10 people. You're really, in order to stay motivated, you need to really give yourself credit for everything that you do. And for example, one thing that I do, right, it can be overwhelming reaching out to people. So I do a lot of, sometimes I start with just browsing LinkedIn, and I start, instead of thinking, well, who are the people that I want to talk to? I just start looking and I'm like, oh, well, who are the people that are inspiring me? And I start putting together a list of their profiles, right? Again, I might end up getting to a few hundreds of them, but I just start putting together a list of people who are interesting to me. And then once I feel like I have a good list, I move on to the stage where I start sending connection requests. And then I say, okay, well, today I'm just going to send 20 connection requests and see what happens. And then tomorrow I'll send another 20 connection requests. So again, the trick there is break it down into steps. Give yourself credit for everything, for every step you complete, and be very kind for yourself. Recognize that this is hard work. You're doing great. Another quick tip, if you can find people who are going through a similar process, and you can, do kind of like a mastermind group, if you will, with them, you can keep yourself accountable. That can be great. So look for your local Facebook group that is a job search support group, and ask people there, hey, does anybody want to do, a challenge where we're all going to reach out to, 50 people on LinkedIn every week for a month and see what happens. So think of how you can create those structures where that can encourage you. All right, I'm looking at the next question. So Natalie asks, what are some strategies for making it clear that your past experiences aren't necessarily where you see your future going when you share your CV or resume? How do I make it clear that I'm open to trying something new? Great question. Changing gears here a little bit, and maybe talking about resumes and positioning yourselves as opposed to networking directly, but still a worthwhile question. And I think one thing I'm going to point out, Natalie, in your questions, you're saying, how do I make it clear that I'm open to trying something new? You're saying that you're open to trying something new. And I think that that's a mistake you're making, because you make it, when you say you're open to trying something new, you're saying, well, you know what? Sounds to me like you're saying, well, I'm not opposed to it. I could do it. And now you're essentially, if you're talking to a potential employer, the employer here is like, well, they need to convince you to do something different, right? Because you're on the, you're open to it, right? You're not super excited, but you're just open to it. So one thing that's really important is having and communicating full conviction that you're not only capable of doing whatever that new thing is, that's exactly what you want to be doing, and you have full confidence that you can be successful at it. So again, let's imagine you are your background is in construction management, and you're looking to shift to accounting. What you need to do is you need to communicate that you can be a very successful accountant, right? Because your job is to convince your potential employer or your networking contact that you can be a very successful accountant. So a few things to do there. One, look back at the first step is Make sure you understand exactly what it takes to be a successful accountant. Let's going back to the conversation about informational interviews, right? Talk to people who are accountants. Make sure that even though you've never had an accounting job, you know exactly what accountants do, and you know exactly what they require for success. Once you understand exactly what accountants do, so like you can describe an accounting job as well as any accountant can, then build out the case for why you can be successful in that, right? You're probably going to need to do some training in accounting, but you're probably also going to need to look back at what you've done in the past. So for example, as an accountant, you might need to be able to work with people in other departments. Make sure that you look back and you can make and you look at anything that is relevant where you've worked with people in other departments, right? Think about what they call transferable skills, and think about what you've done that's related to numbers, that's related to maybe budgeting, that's related to efficiency, that's related to working with other people. So make sure that you highlight that, right? And what you're trying to do is you're now trying to say that, well, this is something I've done in the past, but I'm really an accountant now. I know exactly what it takes to be successful, and I can absolutely be successful. And then that's going to be a really important part of your message. And again, it will be difficult for you to just get an interview through a resume, through applying online, right? Because it is hard to communicate that in a resume, I'm sorry. So you might want to talk to more people and do more networking, right? Talk to people who are accountants who are in a position to refer you to jobs, because once you talk to them, you can really communicate that conviction. Great. I do want to encourage people to ask more questions about networking specifically. Feel free to ask any process questions, any big picture conceptual questions, whatever is interesting to you. And in the meantime, I do want to address some questions that we pre-sourced before this Q&A session. And the question is, what is the best way to introduce yourself to someone new at a virtual networking event? Ooh. That's probably going to depend on the networking event. Let me talk about networking events in general and introducing you yourself at networking events, because it's definitely something that can be tricky. Whenever you're going to an event, virtual or in real life networking event, make sure you have they call it an elevator pitch ready. And an elevator pitch is just your 1-2 sentence summary of who you are as a professional. So for example, if you are a marketing professional with expertise in search engine optimization, and deep knowledge of a specific industry, tech industry, for example, that's a good start for your elevator pitch. So sit down, again, before going to any networking event, sit down and spend just a few minutes, or maybe more than a few minutes, thinking of how you want to describe yourself and how you want to describe yourself at that event. Because I think one mistake that people make is that they think that they have to always describe themselves in the same exact way. But that's not true, right? Maybe a lot of us live on sort of crossroads. I'm a career coach. I'm a program manager, even just in my role right now. I'm also passionate about education and tech industry. So there is a lot of overlaps. And depending on where I go and who I talk to, I'm going to often describe myself slightly different. So when you're preparing for a virtual or real networking event, first of all, think about who are the people who are going to be there. what about you is most relevant to them. And second, think about what you want to, why you want to connect with them. For example, sometimes you want to connect with people because they can give you career advice. Sometimes you want to connect with people because you want to learn more about their industry. Sometimes you want to connect with people because you want to have connections at a certain company. Maybe you're going to a networking event because you're in sales and you're looking for potential customers. So again, going back to the question, what is the best way to introduce yourself to someone new at a virtual networking event is use what you've prepared in terms of what it is that would be interesting to them. And then second part of that is ask them what you potentially want to learn about them, because we often feel that we need to do a lot of talking at networking events. That's not true. That's how everybody feels. Everybody is equally uncomfortable at networking event. And so therefore, the more you help the other person talk by asking them questions, the easier it will be for them to talk to you and the better connection you will make. Great, let's look at the next question. Francisco asks, how do I keep track of my network? For example, if I have 100 people in my network, I will probably forget to keep in contact with some of them. Fantastic question, Francisco. So first of all, just make sure that you have a way to keep track of everyone. And honestly, I don't think that there is a better tool than LinkedIn for that. So make sure that anybody who you think who you consider to be a part of your network, personal, professional, etc., make sure they're in your LinkedIn. And then at least LinkedIn then becomes that like roller deck, the phone book, if you will, of people you're connected with. Again, I know there are certain countries out there, just very few, where LinkedIn might not be accessible, but I'm going to assume that most people here today have access to LinkedIn. And so that's my recommendation. Make sure you add everybody on LinkedIn. If for whatever reason LinkedIn is not available to you, or maybe you're in a country where a lot of people don't use LinkedIn and you just can't add them on LinkedIn, my recommendation is put together a Google Sheet, for example, where you literally keep track of everybody. So that's one. Make sure they're all, where to look them up. Number two, again, if you're using LinkedIn, a super easy way to stay in contact is go to LinkedIn, to just like your LinkedIn news feed once a day or a few times a week, and interact with people as they share information. So if somebody shares an update, people get new jobs, for example, like it, write them a comment. Writing a comment is a really easy way to do it. If they've written an article, again, write them a comment, goes a long way. And that way you are going to be able to just like organically stay in touch with a lot of people. Another thing is write your own updates. It is amazing that if you write your own updates and people see you and your updates in their LinkedIn feed, they will remember much better about you, and maybe they will engage with you yourself. But then I do want to, Francisco, I do want to point out that you're asking a really good question. If you have 100 people, that's not even a lot of people. What if you have 800 people in your network? How are you going to stay in touch with a lot of them? So a couple of things. It is worth the time to actually make sure you follow up with people sometimes. So I would recommend, maybe every 3 months or so, sit down and go through through the full list of your contacts and kind of mark the people that you feel like you haven't interacted with recently. And then maybe, just put it on your calendar. Every week you're going to, to drop just a really quick note to 2 people that you don't normally interact with, right? If it's 2 people, if it's 2 people every week, that's 100 people over the course of a year, and it's not going to take a lot of time. And then finally, last thing to think about is those, holiday updates, for example, something where you can send, if you will, like we just started a new year, but maybe like end of the year newsletter from yourself, if you will. Just BCC everybody in your network and send them updates saying, hey, just wanted to update you on my life in 2020, or maybe send them a holiday card. And one last thing, hugely underutilized is I think is if you're looking for a job specifically and you need help, consider sending one of those BCC emails to everybody you know as well. Because attach your resume, say that you're looking for a job, explain, make it very clear to them what you're looking for and how they can help. Maybe they can connect you with opportunities, maybe they can refer you, maybe they can introduce you to people. It can go a long way, just staying in touch with people, even sometimes not one-on-one, but through group communication is a really great way to do it. All right, next question. Nilat Pal, pardon me if I don't pronounce that right, is asking, what are some do's and don'ts of professional networking? Oh, that's a that's a big question. Let me think about it for a second. I'm going to say that the main do is care about the other person. It's a little bit of an interesting concept because often when we network, we need something from people. But at the same time, the way relationships are built, and networking is all about relationships, is if you care about the other person. And so network with people who are genuinely interesting to you. Avoid networking with people that you think you should network with, right? What I mean by that is if you see somebody who is in the right role at the right company, but for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable talking to them. Maybe it's somebody you used to work with in the past, and for whatever reason you didn't leave on good terms. Or maybe it's somebody you don't know, but it just doesn't seem like they have the personality of a person that you can connect with. Just don't. There is a lot of people out there, and it's worth talking to people who you will enjoy talking to, who you will care about. So as I said, first thing is care about people, be grateful to them, be interested in them. That's one. Two is make it easy for other people to help you. A mistake I often see people doing is reaching out to people and saying, hey, I'm looking for a new job. Can you help? Well, that's hard, right? Because essentially, if you reach out to me and you ask, and you say, I'm looking for a new job, can you help? Do I know what type of job you're looking for? Maybe you're looking for a job in a field I'm not familiar with, right? Maybe you're looking for a job in as a software engineer, and I don't know exactly the different types of software engineers. I don't even know how to identify what's the right job for you. So if you're reaching out, be clear how the other person can help you, and that might change from person to person, right? If you're looking for referrals for specific jobs with specific titles, ask about that. If you're looking for connections to people who can, specific job titles, ask about that. If you're looking to be introduced to a specific person, include a little paragraph explaining that the person you're reaching out to can just forward on. So do as much work as possible for the other person so that helping you becomes as easy and as seamless as possible. And then the last third thing is always follow up. I think that's where a lot of even experienced networkers drop the ball. If you've reached out to somebody for an informational interview, then of course send a thank you note. I hope that should go without saying. Send a thank you note, follow up, tell them what you learned from the conversation. But even beyond that, if they've introduced you to somebody that you had a conversation with as a result, send a message to them, say, follow up and tell them what came out of it. If they gave you an advice that you went and you got trained and 6 months later, send them a note. Or if you were looking for a job and they were part of your job search journey in any shape or form, also once you find a job, do send them a note. And maybe, if you've engaged hundreds of people, maybe it's going to be a group update with BCC, but maybe it's going to be one-on-one. So just follow up, keep people engaged, tell people what's going on with you, follow up on how they've been helpful to you. And then we are just a couple of minutes from the end of our seminar. We might, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat here for a second. We might have time for one more question if one more question comes in. A couple of things I want to point out. If you do think of additional questions about networking after the end of today's conversation, definitely feel free to post those questions in the Coursera Career Center. So go ahead and go to the Coursera Career Center. There is a job search Q&A forum there. Please post your questions there. Also go ahead and see if there are any questions that you can answer there. That's a really good way to engage with people. Also do keep in mind that we do have 2 more of these Q&As coming up. So next week and the week after next, we'll be talking about interviews and job applications. Please feel free to join because I've had a really great time chatting with you so far. As I said, there is time for one more question. So that question is going to be, how do I add value to my network? What a great question, right? People always tell you that you should think about how to be useful to people that you reach out to, right? If you reach out to somebody and they spend 30 minutes talking to you about their job so that you can better understand it, you need to make sure to be valuable to them as well. And keep in mind that being valuable doesn't mean that you immediately do something for them. Being valuable can mean that you're, extend the offer to introduce them to people. Say, hey, I have network in XYZ, or maybe I've noticed that you have a certain interest in our conversation. Please let me know if I can be of help. And then, of course, in the future, if they ever reach out to you, make sure to pay them back. And one last question, just because I can't help it. Can you write HR directly in LinkedIn that I have seen this position in your company and I am interested? Yes, absolutely. You can, if you know who posted the position on LinkedIn, you can reach out to that recruiter or HR person directly. Tip about working with recruiters: if you reach out to recruiters directly, just make their job easier for them. So when you reach out, don't just say, hey, I saw this job, here's my resume. Tell them, hey, I saw this job. I think it's a great fit because of XYZ. Can I send you my resume directly? If they don't respond, really important tip, somebody doesn't respond to you on LinkedIn, don't take it personally. There's 10,000 reasons people don't respond. It's probably not about you at all. But a lot of the times, it's a much easier way to get somebody's attention, because for a recruiter, if you took the time to reach out to them on LinkedIn, in addition to just applying online, then you are already you already show commitment, and you already show that you're engaged and you're passionate and you're interested, and that's a really important signal to them, so they might respond to you. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I had a great time talking to all of you. Thank you for your fabulous questions. As I said, lots of great resources available through the Career Center on the Coursera community platform. Please ask questions there, answer questions, and feel free to utilize those resources. We will have 2 more Q&A sessions next week and the week after that, and I hope to see you all here. Thank you very much again for joining today.